Ladies and gentlemen, good day and welcome to the Firstsource Solutions Limited Q2 FY22 earnings conference call. As a reminder, all participant lines will be in the listen-only mode, and there will be an opportunity for you to ask questions after the presentation concludes. Should you need assistance during the conference call, please signal an operator by pressing star then zero on your touchtone phone. Please note that this conference is being recorded. I now hand the conference over to Mr. Ankur Maheshwari from Firstsource Solutions Limited. Thank you, and over to you, sir.
Thanks. Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us for the quarter ended September 30th, 2021 earnings call for Firstsource. To take us through the results and to answer your queries, we have with us today Mr. Vipul Khanna, our MD and CEO, and Dinesh Jain, our CFO. We will be starting this call with a brief presentation providing an overview of the company's performance, followed by a Q&A session. Do note that the results, the fact sheet, and the presentation have been emailed to you, and you can also view this on our website, www.firstsource.com. Before we begin the call, please note that some of the matters we will discuss on this call, including our business outlook, are forward-looking, and as such are subject to known and unknown risks. These uncertainties and risks are included but not limited to what we have mentioned in our prospectus filed with the SEBI and subsequent annual reports that are available on our website. With that said, I now turn the call over to Mr. Vipul Khanna to begin the proceedings. Vipul.
Thanks, Ankur. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us today. Slightly belated, but wishing each of you a very happy Diwali and may good health and joy light up your lives. Let me give some quick remarks. So we had another steady quarterly performance in second quarter of fiscal 22. Revenues grew 18.5% year on year in constant currency and came in at INR 14,286 million or $193 million. Operating margins were 12.5% and EPS grew 30.7% year on year. Our business across our industry segments and service lines continues to scale well. The performance is a testament of the focus on our great growth framework. This means we continue to maintain a sharp focus on our three core industries of banking and financial services, healthcare, and comms, media, and tech. Second, modernize our offerings, particularly investing in our digital first, digital now approach. And three, build a purpose-led, scalable, and agile organization. First off, today we have executed an agreement to acquire 100% of the Stonehill Group to add to our mortgage portfolio. And we expect to close this transaction by end of the calendar year. This transaction is consistent with our systematic inorganic growth strategy to add adjacencies to our existing offerings. We will discuss more on this in a few minutes. Let me walk you through this quarter's performance and the key highlights in each of our industry segments. Our banking and financial services segment grew by 13.4% year on year and 12.3% in constant currency in the second quarter. While we continue to see decent year-over-year performance, the mortgage business declined sequentially as expected. This is primarily due to the slowdown in the refinance volumes in the origination segment. Despite this decline, we are pleased that we gained market share from flight to quality and a well-developed on and offshore delivery model. The servicing portfolio in our mortgage business continued to make gains with strong expansion across existing and new clients. Our digital portfolio is scaling up nicely as well. The post-closing platform that I have talked to you about in the past now has 4 active clients, and our first low-code, no-code application went live for a key mortgage process and is, to my mind, a harbinger of increasing usage of low-code, no-code apps. Despite the inherent volatility of the refinance market, our long-term growth strategy has not changed. The real estate market in the US is strong and is expected to remain so over the medium term. We consistently expand our existing client relationships while adding new clients to the mix. During this quarter, we added 4 new clients. At the same time, We continue to expand our capabilities in adjacent areas to leverage both our scale in the mortgage industry and the relationships we have built over time. The acquisition we just announced of the Stonehill Group is a great example of this. Let me switch to the collections business. The collection business is underperforming our expectations, impacting the full year growth projections. We had anticipated a greater pickup in credit card receivables delinquency with the gradual opening of the US economy. In fact, the delinquency rates are at record lows. Federal Reserve card delinquency rate for the last quarter was 1.54%, the lowest on record since they started reporting this metric 30 years ago. So while consumer spending is increasing, the customers are paying off their balances due on time or are increasingly using debit cards for their purchases. This is impacting the volumes that we handle for our clients. While it is difficult to determine how long this trend may continue, the emerging macro view from analysts and bankers suggests that payment rates should normalize and delinquencies should begin to rise as the economic stimulus effect wanes. Now, as with the mortgage business, we continue to expect the collection business to be a growth driver, barring this exceptional period of economic behavior. We continue to diversify our client base to other industry segments and made good progress on our push to fintech and utilities with a market-leading digital collections platform. As consumer payment habits evolve, we saw greater volumes from our fintech and BNPL clients in this quarter, albeit this is still a smaller share of the market. Our UK BFS business maintains its steady momentum, and we are quite excited about some of the deals we are currently working on. In fact, after a long 20-month hiatus, I'm traveling to UK tomorrow to meet our existing clients and some of these prospects. The healthcare segment grew by 31.7% year-on-year and 32% in constant currency this quarter and was the fastest growing segment once again. We are pleased that our investments in new capabilities are beginning to pay off. In particular, the significant addition to our sales, solutioning, and key delivery ecosystem for platform-based services are being well received by the market and truly differentiating us. On the back of this, we are increasingly participating in large transformation deals. Recently, we closed our largest platform-based service or BPaaS deal with a large health insurance company. This highly competitive win will re-architect the client's entire business operations by retiring old technology and replacing with a modern integrated software and services solution. We will take complete ownership of running and improving the organization's operations while simultaneously modernizing the underlying technology stack. This deal is reflective of the market's growing acceptance of BPM and technology companies collaborating for executing large-scale transformation, in this case, to improve member health outcomes and experiences while delivering cost efficiencies. Now, this is truly a pivotal deal as it gives us access to the BPaaS market and, more importantly, validates our template of domain plus digital, which has triumphed over the scale of integrated service providers. This is a $110 million TCV and is our first $100 million deal in healthcare. And I believe this is the first of several such partnership deals across the industry where clients choose best-of-breed partners to execute complex transformation by bringing the best of ops and IT partners together. Apart from this win, the pipeline of our digital intake business at its highest level as we look to add more marquee names to our client roster. We added 2 new clients this quarter in our HPHS business. The volumes in the provider businesses have remained steady. As we discussed earlier, the public health emergency continues to remain in effect in the US, and a large number of states are still dealing with high COVID caseload, impacting elective procedure volumes at hospitals. Over the last several months, we've been working to create a holistic and connected ecosystem of our solutions for the healthcare provider world. In this quarter, we launched our Healthcare Cloud. This will help us onboard customers faster and enable them to modularly consume our services. In the first phase, we have launched 9 services across pre-visit, self-pay, receivables management, and uncompensated care. I'm very excited with this launch and the possibilities it creates for our business. Finally, Our communications, media, and tech segment continues to perform well. In the second quarter of fiscal 22, this segment grew by 25% year-on-year and 18.3% in constant currency. The business and client relationships are steady, and we are capitalizing on growth opportunities. Our key clients witnessed lower volumes as summer months and the opening of the UK meant more people were outdoors and less of cable and TV, etc. at home. Also, the UK market is going through an unprecedented talent situation, leading to some demand execution challenges for us. Sales momentum is indeed picking up. We added 3 new clients this quarter, including new age fintechs across US and Europe. For these fintech clients, we are designing, building, and running their end-to-end operation using components of our digitally empowered contact center platform. On another note, I'm pleased to say that Firstsource has been positioned by ISG as a leader in the ISG Provider Lens Quadrant report on European contact centers. Firstsource was one of just a few named the leader across all 4 categories: digital operations, artificial intelligence and analytics, work from home, and social media customer experience. This is a great validation of our focus on modernizing our offerings. Operator, can you hear me okay? I just got an echo back.
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, let me continue. All right. Let me give a quick comment on the talent situation. As you're all aware, both the US and UK markets are going through unprecedented talent shortages driven by a multitude of structural and pandemic-related reasons. At Firstsource, the situation is no different. Attracting and retaining talent in both these markets has been challenging, resulting in some revenue being left on the table. We are executing a slew of tactical and more structural actions to increase our hiring and retain talent for longer. The actions focus on better outreach, higher comms, a new incentive plan in targeted areas, and revamping of our training and on-the-job training strategy. At the same time, we are adapting to the evolving work from home or work from office dynamics as the economies open up. Let me give you some comments on the Stonehill acquisition. The company is based out of Atlanta and was founded in 1996. This acquisition provides a strong presence in the quality control and due diligence segments within the mortgage business. The strong lending market and climate of increased regulatory scrutiny makes the quality control or QC and due diligence offerings very attractive and add more links to our mortgage value service chain. In addition to allowing us to cross-sell their capabilities for existing clients, the Stonehill Group provides us with deep access to mid-market lenders and banks. The purchase consideration for this acquisition is expected to be $27 million, of which 80% or $21.6 million will be paid at closing, and the balance after 12 months linked to earnout. The company is expected to achieve $20 million of revenue in calendar 21, and this is likely to contribute about 60 to 70 basis points of growth to our revenues in fiscal 22. Finally, coming to the full year 22 outlook, we are revising our growth guidance to 14.5% to 15.5% in constant currency, including the contribution from the Stonehill acquisition. We expect Q3 revenues to be roughly flat sequentially. As we discussed earlier, the collection business is facing transitory macro challenges, and then there is a revenue impact from talent situation in our onshore market. However, this does not in any way detract from a long-term growth trajectory. We remain confident in our ability to drive top quartile growth in the industry. When we look to Q4, we see a strong momentum in the business based on the recent healthcare win we discussed earlier. CMT wins expected to start ramping up, and the historically stronger Q4 in collections. We are pleased with this expected Q4 momentum, which results in a run rate that sets up nicely for fiscal 23. We also realize that all this demand needs to be fulfilled, and we are feeling good about the impact of actions we are taking to attract and keep more talent. The operating margin guidance is maintained at 11.8 to 12.3%. With this, I'll pass it to Dinesh to cover financials in some more detail.
Hey, hi everyone. Thank you, Vipul. Here's a quick summary of the Q2 financial performance. Revenue for Q2 came in at rupees 14,286 million or $193 million. This implies a year-on-year growth of 20.3% in rupee term and 18.5% in constant currency term. As Vipul talked about on the margin front, operating margin came in at rupees 1,791 million or 12.5% of revenue, which is a healthy growth of 31.9% year-on-year, and this implies a margin expansion of 111 basis points. Profit after tax came in at rupees 1,350 million or 9.5% of the revenue for the Q2. This is again a healthy 28.2% growth year-on-year with a margin expansion of 59 basis points. In the Q2, we have generated almost 2,429 million cash from operation, and our FCF was 2,271 million, which is after adjusting for capex of 158 million. Closing cash balance as of September is approximately 2,177 million. This came in, DSO was around 54 days, which is in compared to the last quarter of 56 days. Net debt situation further better off as we repaid around 65 crore this quarter, and which stands at now 3,380 million or $45.5 million versus the last quarter 53 million. Tax rate for the Q2 was around 18%, and we are still holding the guidance between 17 to 19% for the year for the tax rate. On the forex hedging side, as you are aware of, we have a long-term hedging policy, and currently we covered GBP 46.7 million for the next 2 years, with rate ranging between 110 to 117 per pound. On the dollar book, we hedge around $81.6 million with average rate between 77 to 82 dollars. With this, we can open up for the question. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will now begin the question and answer session. Anyone who wishes to ask a question may press star and 1 on the touchtone telephone. If you wish to remove yourself from the question queue, you may press star and 2. Participants are requested to use handsets while asking a question. Ladies and gentlemen, we will wait for a moment while the question queue assembles. The first question is from the line of Mohit Jain from Anand Rathi. Please go ahead.
Sir, just one on your guidance. Did I hear it right? You're revising it to 14.5 to 15.5, including the acquisition.
That's correct, Mohit.
So, what caused such a sharp drop or decline in the guidance in the last 3 months? Because from your commentary, it appears that most of the things seem to be on track, except that we had this big decline in 2Q. So, are you expecting? Earlier the idea a few quarters back was we should be able to maintain the current run rate of 4Q21 during the year. Now, it looks like you are expecting that in 4Q also you may see some drop. Is that a correct assessment, or what is your thought behind this revision?
Sure. So Mohit, we have kind of tightened the band to a percentage, and the lower end we have dropped by a little bit. From the last time we spoke, mortgage has declined, but that was expected, right? We've been talking about it. That's kind of more inherently volatile revenue, right? It kind of peaked in Q4 of last year, sort of trended into Q1, and then it started dropping, right? The unexpected portion has been collections. As I mentioned, last year the spends were low because discretionary spends were low. But because people had a lot of cash, they've been paying up, right? Which means that the volumes that we have from our clients to work on us, that's declined. And a few of our top clients have asked us to reduce capacity temporarily because, the credit quality is so good. So that's been one big cause of why we've had to kind of adjust our guidance. And the second one, I think as the economies have started to open up, especially US and UK, the talent shortage for our industry is pretty pronounced, right? Across sectors, you see everybody's kind of trying to hire people. So I think that has caused some challenges for us on the revenue side. And UK obviously has the Brexit impact playing out too now, right? With shortage of labor kind of reflecting. And US has its own shortages as the economy opens up. So these two factors are primarily kind of forced us to bring the guidance a little bit down. As I said, Q3, so the December quarter we expect will be kind of similar to this year, but I expect that to be pick up strongly by Q4, which is our March quarter for FY22, to kind of net land between 14.5 to 15.5.
Understood. And so second, just a clarification. So when you say labor shortage, you would expect you to sort of get hit on the margin side, not on the revenue side. In this case, what you're saying is that our margins may hold up well, and we may have to sacrifice some revenues on account of tight labor conditions.
Yeah, I mean, we're going through this pocket where, where we have demand, we're not able to kind of get enough people to fulfill demand, right? India, we don't have that problem, right? India, attrition is high, but there is enough supply. US, UK supplies tend to be limited, so there is some revenue which is left on the table. The call out on the margin is obviously this was a strong quarter, but we have implemented increments from October 1st, so we'll see some impact of that. But also because of high demand, it has allowed us to shift some of the capacity to offshore, which has a positive impact on the margin.
So that basis, second half, you should broadly maintain at first half level from an EBITDA perspective, right? Or should we expect a little drop given that wage will become effective?
A little bit drop. Overall, we're still maintaining our initial guidance of 11.8 to 12.3.
Understood, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Mohit.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Nagraj Chandrasekhar from Laburnum. Please go ahead.
Hi, good morning. Vipul, could you expand a bit on this large healthcare deal we won, who our partners are, what sort of solution we are replacing, who we competed with to win this, and what would be sort of the annual revenue impact of this deal? Because 100 million is a large number, and I guess it would be shared with the partner. So how it would hit our revenues, and what the pipeline of such deals looks like in the future, and what sort of win rates we expect here.
Right. Hi, Nagraj. So, Nagraj, this is a BPaaS deal, Business Process as Service, where combined with our partner, we are responsible for the technology stack, the ops stack, and the design and analytics on top, right? The three core components to drive change into the business. We have partnered with an IT services company. In fact, we've developed a number of IT services partnerships. So in this case, we've chosen a partner who kind of fits the bill. We are the prime, and the partner will be kind of the sub. And then there are a couple of other product companies, technology product companies will be part of this sort of group of sorts. The deal is $210 million. As I said, our share is about 110. Okay, so that's the number kind of I shared with you. And we expect at today's sort of starting point, we expect about 16 odd million a year revenue. Once there'll be some choppiness once it starts and then kind of settles down, but give or take about 15-16 million a year revenue from there, from the current scope, and hopefully wherever we go from there. We won against the big ones, the big integrated players who do everything. So we won against sort of all tier one competition. Long deal cycle, but it's the strength of our business knowledge, the strength of sort of how we brought different tools together to improve the business processes, which allowed us to win this deal. It's something which I'm keenly looking forward to a strong execution, because then it opens up sort of the market. We are beginning to see more deals like this. We have a couple more, not necessarily exactly the same scope, but similar transformation with different sort of architectures in the hopper. I'd love to win all, but realistically, first is a great one and then kind of sets the momentum. I hope it gives you enough color on the deal.
Yes, that's very helpful. Thank you. Congratulations on this again. Also on the collections part, which you said has come back a bit slower than expected. The October month saw a very large amount of US spending again on credit cards after a weak period in the prior months. So typically, how long does it take for a large spending amount to sort of filter down into good collections numbers for us? Number one. And number two, this large shift to spending away from credit cards towards BNPL, is that revenue accretive or dilutive for us?
Sure. No, great question. So look, typically, card spend versus people who fall behind, the delinquency starts at 90 to 120 days, and then the write-off, as per the current US accounting standards, etc., is I think 180 days, right? But there are more nuances to this. I think, as you rightly picked up, the October spend has come up, but then we got to see where is that spend. Is it mostly happening in prime or subprime? Because the prime customers would mostly be the ones who are spending and paying down, right? They're using it more like a charge card than a credit card. It's the subprime which revolve. And I think the prime is at this time ahead on the spend. The subprime hasn't picked up as much. So there will be the lagged impact of that before it gets to delinquent. And your second question was around BNPL and fintech. Yeah. So yes, I think they are fast-growing segments. They're still a smaller portion of the total market. We are keenly watching it. We are fully into it, right? We already working with sort of 3 of the top 8 BNPL companies with our digital collections platform because they want only digital solutions. And we have a very focused team targeting to work with other BNPL as well as expand the scope of our serving, not just from digital collections, but also go to merchant servicing and stuff like that. So very hot trend, a lot of action there. And over time, I think this will only grow at the cost of credit cards. So we have to go both feet into that while we still serve the bigger traditional card segment.
And just one last question on the mortgages, the absolute amount this quarter, and what was the servicing versus refi split here, and how you see the decline levels from here on?
Yeah. So this quarter, mortgages was roughly, let me get my numbers right so I don't give you the wrong number. This quarter, the mortgage side, our mortgage business came in at about 55-ish sort of million, right? For this quarter, something like that. And between the servicing and that, Ankur, help me with the split between origination and servicing.
Just a moment, let me just put that through as well. Otherwise, I can probably give it back to you offline, if that's all right.
Sure. Sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Reminder to the participants, to ask a question, please press star and 1. The next question is from the line of Dipesh Mehta from Emkay Global. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. Couple of questions. First, about just trying to understand guidance. You indicated about the acquisition will contribute about 0.6 to 0.8%. Is it correct for FY21?
0.6 to 0.7%, Dipesh, for FY22.
That is largely for Q4 kind of contribution, right?
That's correct.
What would be the mix in Stonehill revenue between origination and servicing? Because it seems they are not seeing that headwind, what our mortgage business is witnessing.
Yeah. No, good observation. So look, I think mortgage origination, if you break it into refinance, which is same property, same owner, just refinancing for a lower rate, versus a purchase transaction where somebody is buying a first house, a second house, upgrading, what have you. QC and due diligence are used for both, but there is a heavier weightage for QC and DD or due diligence being used for more purchase transactions and for more complex mortgages, right? So the more vanilla products of mortgage for smaller tickets, they go through because they're more standardized. But the more what they call as non-traditional, those are a bigger portion of what the ultimate GSEs, the Fannie Mae's and Freddie Mae's, want the QCs to be done for a greater portion on those. So I think there is some hedge to refi because greater portion of purchase and then a greater portion of complex transactions, whether refi or purchase, use QC and due diligence. And second, due diligence mostly plays in the securities, in the securitization. So whatever has been heavily sort of refinanced and so many transactions that happened in the last 2 years, right, given the low interest rate, a lot of them are now going through or will go through securitization and change hands. And in this, during this change of hands of the securitized portfolio is when due diligence gets used. So that kind of gives us an element of hedge to pure refi origination.
Okay. And for the current calendar, you indicated revenue to be around 28 million for that entity?
No, 20 million. For calendar 21, 20 million, 20.
20 million. Okay. And in terms of client profile, whether it helps us to diversify and reduce dependency on few clients in mortgage business post acquisition, or it won't have any material difference for us?
100% complementary because they usually service the mid-market lenders and the smaller banks. We generally play with the bigger originators and banks. So this is a new complementary market, and we think we can take some of our title services, etc., to the smaller bank market. And likewise, we take their services and sell to our bigger clients for QC and due diligence.
Understand. And whether it operates at similar profit margin of our mortgage business, or it is different considering 100% on-site kind of thing?
They are 100% transaction-based pricing, and also they have good technology which is integrated. So despite being onshore, they have healthier margins.
Understand. So second question about the large deal which you indicated in healthcare. If you can provide some detail, I think you gave some detail like 16 million revenue run rate and other things. So from when you expect the deal ramp up to play out? And second thing is the supply challenges what we are witnessing. Do you think any implication it could have in terms of overall ramp up plan for that deal?
Not in that deal. So first of all, from a timeline perspective, we expect that deal to kind of start going on track from Q4, right? So January, February onwards, we'll start the implementation. There is a small rebatch portion that we're doing, which kind of gives us a head start. And then it's a heavier component of offshore to India and Philippines, where the talent market is still has a lot of runway. So I think talent constraints won't play a role in that deal.
Understand. And coming to the last two questions from my side, coming to collection business, can you provide some detail about, let's say, what was the revenue run rate, where it currently operates at, how you expect it to play out in next 2 quarters? If you can provide some detail, just to understand the kind of challenges and volume weakness we are witnessing in the business.
Yeah. So last year, fiscal 21, we did closer to sort of 65-ish million on that business, right? Q4 is a strong quarter there because there are higher collections from tax refunds, etc. So there is some seasonality of in that collection business. We have seen sort of flattish to now a declining somewhat Q2. We expect Q3 to be flat. There will be a seasonal strength which will come up in Q4. Net, our sense at this point that for the full year 22, collections will be very marginally up from last year, while our original forecast was a stronger company sort of average growth. But right now we expect it will be a marginal up given just the lack of volumes in that segment.
So broadly, the difference is growth expectation versus flattish performance. It is not like it has started declining for us.
No, because of the growth from fintech and BNPL and stuff, right? There is that, and then there is downdraft from our traditional client base for now contracting. So, but it's still a net growth.
Understand. And the last question is on the top client. This quarter also, I think we are alluding to some of the volume slippage happening because of supply challenges, plus Brexit-related things and economy open up. How one should expect Q2 is now more sustainable run rate, or you expect further weakness to happen in top client?
Okay. So for our top client, I mentioned two reasons. One, the summer months are generally soft for them, right? Because the big sports, etc. franchises kind of take a break. People are more out and stuff. So there is less trading activity that they see on the client. It generally picks up in the December quarter because that's a festive season and stuff like that. And plus there is a new product launch as well. So we're starting to see more volumes come through. And the good thing is there is now a little bit more weightage towards offshore. So it helps us on the talent side as well, given some of the constraints onshore. So I expect a pickup in Q3 and then sustaining that in Q4 for our top line.
Because last year base is very high for H2 perspective if I look at it. So, but do you expect YOY growth to happen in that account in H2 perspective?
I don't have that handy.
Roughly 67 million was the number for last year H2. Currently we are at somewhere around 30 million Q2 run rate.
Yeah. Ankur, do you have the sense of what do we have the latest on H2 from this?
No, we don't have the H2 breakup handy. Dipesh, again, this is something which probably when I can pick up separately.
No issue. Thank you.
And sorry, Nagaraj, if you're still on the call, just to come back to your question, it was Q2 on mortgage, the breakdown between origination and servicing was 67-33, so 2/3, 1/3, which was compared to the previous quarter was more like 70-30ish, right? So there's a good 3 points movement with servicing kind of rising, but also the compression in the overall mortgage business. All right, back to you, please.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Shraddha from AMSEC. Please go ahead.
Yeah, hi, Vipul. Just to ask you more on the guidance perspective. So we are talking of this large deal ramp up to happen in 4Q, and despite that, we are cutting our full year guidance. So do we expect further moderation in our mortgage business from the current run rate, or what is it that is leading to a cut in guidance to help from this deal which will come through in Q4?
Yeah. So, Shweta, as I said, I think because of the expected slowdown in mortgage, or not slowdown, reduction, right? Because last year's volumes were kind of seasonally high. Now, as interest rates come up, the refi volumes will drop while the purchase volumes will continue, right, to grow because the real estate market is still strong in the US. So that reduction in refi volume kind of started in June quarter, right? We saw more of that in September. I think it will continue a little bit more and then stabilize, hopefully by Q4, if not by Q1 of next year. But this is all as we expected in the mortgage business. The reason primarily for us to tighten our guidance from 15-18 to 14.5 and 15.5, primarily, as I said, is from the unexpected macro conditions which are impacting collections and somewhat the talent situation in US and UK, which is leaving some unfulfilled demand for us. Those are the two reasons. But I still expect at this time, sitting in sort of mid-November, that Q4 we should see a good pickup of demand, and we'll kind of book the revenue not just from the large deal but also from some of the other CMT deals that we signed, plus some pickup, the seasonal pickup in collections. So Q4 should be strong, and hence when I look at the entire year, we had these two quarters of macro condition driven turbulence, but I think we come back to Q4 and then sustain that in FY23 is the sense we have at this point in time.
Yeah. So just in terms of numbers, the mortgage is what, close to $56 million in this quarter. So can we look at this number going below $50 million by Q4 and then stabilize from there on?
I think we will see some reduction from the current level. Exactly where it goes down, there are some moving parts and deals in the pipeline as well. So I think we'll wait for another quarter to say where we end up in Q4. But I think the reduction and the full impact of the reduction will have some impact on our numbers. But at the same time, the new wins from servicing as well as some synergies from Stonehill from Q1 of next year, I think that will provide us the buffer to sustain that business.
Right. And just one other question. So, we have some payments. One is on this acquisition of Stonehill, and then the other is the payment which we have to make to the mortgage client. So how are we looking at funding these payouts? Is it all from internal accruals, or we have to raise some money to fund these payouts?
No, I think our free cash flows are pretty strong. We made our first payment to our mortgage client in July, and I think the next one kind of coming up not until next financial year, start of next financial year. And as I said, the Stonehill acquisition is about a $21.5 million payment in closing at the end of the year. The rest is after 12 months. So I think this will do comfortably from our free cash flows. Obviously, we'll keep working with our working capital limits and stuff. Dinesh, you wanted to add any more color on that?
No, I think that's true, Vipul. It's all going to be funded through internal accruals. That's all.
And we should not see any change in our payout policy as well, right?
Payout policy in the sense of dividend you are talking?
Dividend payout, yeah. I mean, last 2 years have been strong on dividend payouts. So given that we have such payouts in terms of acquisition and the other client-specific payouts, so should we see any moderation in our dividend payout this year?
Yeah, Shweta, early for that, right? We're just about at the mid-year point. At this point in time, we see good cash flows, right? And still a business, even at the midpoint of our guidance, a business which is still growing at 15%. So I think the business is on a strong footing, and we'll see where we end up in the next 2 quarters from a dividend standpoint.
Okay, sure. And so just one thing you said, we would have some impact of wage hike in Q3. Did I hear it right?
Yes. We for parts of our colleagues, we've implemented increments from October 1. We'll see some impact of that in our Q3 numbers. But as I said, we're still maintaining our full year guidance and margin of 11.8 to 12.3.
And if I'm not wrong, we had given out certain hikes in Q1 as well, right? I mean, so is it another round of salary hike that we are giving in a gap of just 1 quarter, or what is it? I mean, Q1, if I recall right, we had some impact of wage hike in that quarter as well.
No, we had done our last hike for parts of our population from effective January 1st, right? So we're now trying to get back into cycle after last year was a little bit of a unique year, right? Given COVID and stuff like that. So that was Jan 1st. This is October, and we'll see. I think this is our senses for now. We want to keep this as a cycle for the future.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Dipesh Mehta from Emkay Global. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. Couple of questions. First, earlier I think we indicated last quarter earnings call, mortgage business, we expect double-digit organic revenue growth, excluding Stonehill, which we did. Do we believe we can deliver double-digit revenue growth for full year, considering where we are in Q2?
So, yeah, Dipesh, it'll still be a net growth year. At this point in time, we are looking at somewhere between high single digit to kind of early double digit, right? The pace of the decline in refi market has been dynamic, and we'll see how this plays out. But at this time, we're still very confident of achieving net growth, whether that's high single digit or early double digit. We'll kind of get a sense in the next 2 or 3 months.
Okay. Second question is about the Stonehill run rate. You indicated for the year we expect around 20 million for current year. If I look the 9 months which we reported, it is somewhere around 17.5 million, which indicate a run rate is likely to materially decelerate in Q4 per se. So how one should look for next year perspective, and what explains any particular seasonality in that business, or why it is so low in Q4?
I think so they have 3 businesses, right? They have QC, they have due diligence, and then they have a portion of what is called fulfillment, which is similar to what our origination refinance business is. They had a little bit of a choppy part of that business, which was, they have that as well. Like us, they had a good first half of the year, and like us, as industry volumes decline, they are seeing some compression there as well. That's the portion which is declining somewhat as they come into the fourth quarter. The QC and BD businesses are stable and they're growing. I think at this time, as I said, we modeled them at about 60 to 70 basis points of our revenue growth, somewhere between, I think, 4 to 4.5 million.
Okay, so it would be 21 to 22 million, not 20 million. Right understanding?
Sorry, I didn't understand the math.
Because 9 months they did 17.3 million. If they do 4 to 4.5 million in Q4, then run rate should be 21 to 22 million for the year.
Oh, you were talking about so no, I was answering for your going forward sort of run rate for us.
Okay. So going forward, it should be somewhere around 4 to 4.5 million quarterly run rate.
At least that's the start point, and obviously the synergies to come from there.
Yeah, that gives some sense. And last question is about if I look BFS excluding mortgage business, it seems to have declined 10%, so closer to double digit quarter on quarter. Now earlier you suggested collection business is largely flattish. So what explains this weakness in non-mortgage business in BFS?
There is obviously an element of seasonality which I mentioned. If you take the seasonality out, collections has been sort of flattish. But obviously there is some decline at this point in time. And second, the UK component, right, of our BFS business also had shades of the talent situation coming into play there.
Do you expect it to reverse? Because I think UK, our non-mortgage business used to do well for us, which to some extent help us to negate mortgage weakness. Do you expect it to bounce back in next 2 quarters also?
Yeah, I think, as I mentioned, the talent situation, I think we'll start to kind of get ahead of as this quarter goes by and next year comes in, next sort of calendar year comes in. Second, I think the pipeline is good. The demand pipeline seems to be strong in the UK BFS. I'm excited by a couple of transformational deals in the play, coming up into their final stretch. So yeah, I think we should start to see strength coming back into UK BFS in Q4.
Understand. And last one clarification, I think you indicated services and origination mix is 1/3, 2/3, right?
Yes.
So it seems your servicing business also declined this quarter, roughly around double digit QOQ.
No, it was flattish. I don't think it declined. It was flattish, and that's why it kind of grew up as a percentage compared to the previous quarter.
Okay. No issues, because my number was indicating something different. No issues. Thanks.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, this was the last question for today. I would now like to hand the conference over to the management for closing comments.
Great. Well, again, thank you everyone for your interest and great questions as always. I think we gave you a good sense of how Q2 was and give you good color on sort of how Q3 would be. I look forward to coming back and speaking to you again in a few months, and hope everybody stays well and healthy. Take care.
Thank you. On behalf of Firstsource Solutions Limited, that concludes this conference. Thank you for joining us, and you may now disconnect your lines.